Hello and welcome to the Dinosaw for week 16, another 7 curious, interesting things I saw last week. So let's crack on. First one is Dall-E 2. So this is the second version of Dall-E. Dall-E 1 came out last year and it was a way of generating relatively crude but actually pretty good images by typing in words, and this takes it a whole new step, especially in terms of quality. So this uses a different background, how it's going to work. The previous one used GPT-3, which was quite scary, and OpenAI, who make GPT-3, also do a thing called Clip. So that is what this is using. It's using a different technology behind the scenes, basically. They use diffusion models to create the images. I'm not going to explain what that is, but essentially it's a training model that you can then train it using ice skates and pandas and ask it for ice skating pandas. Monkeys, maybe somebody doing their taxes, different images, you train it, maybe what does a funny hat look like, and it can put all those things together and create images out of them. It understands the context of them, it can generate as many versions of them as you want. It will just keep going and going and going. As you can see in the top right, this is teddy bears mixing sparkling chemicals as mad scientists in a steampunk style. It made all that up. And at the bottom you've seen a macro 35mm photography of large family of mice wearing hats cozy by the fireplace, and that's what it created as well. So it's super powerful if you work in illustration, photography, Photoshop, if you're commissioning any sort of artwork, if you're an editor, for instance, of newspapers or magazines, then this is what you should be looking at and figuring out how on earth you work with this. There are some restrictions to it. You can't use it for political use, you can't generate celebrities doing anything, and of course you can't use it for pornography, all those sorts of things. So this could be used for great stuff and also for some evil stuff, as ever. However, Dall-E 2, check it out. It is super powerful and really interesting. Meta have revealed their pricing structure for the Metaverse, which I'll come to at the end with my view on that. However, what they've said is they want to take 47.5% of everything sold on Horizon Worlds, which is their VR world essentially. So a certain chunk of that actually just goes to the base Quest store, which is the headset store, and then you go onto Horizon Worlds, and another 17.5% is taken on top of that as well. So if you are a creator, then you're only getting 52.5% of all the purchases. So so this is really interesting in as much as if you look at the other stores, so there's a big list of them on the right hand side, and these are, you know, obviously every other type of store and platform. You've got Apple who take 20% or 30% depending on which tier you're on. If you look at the other metaverses, should we call them, I'll do that in big air quotes, you've got Sandbox and Decentraland. They take about 5%. If not, they'll take 2.5%. So Facebook or Meta are taking between 10 and 20 times more from the creators than those metaverse sites are. So if you are a creator, and it is the creators who will be creating the metaverse, it won't be big monolithic organizations like Facebook who will be creating that. That's just a walled garden of VR experience. You really want to attract creators and give them a good deal, and that's what you're going to see on those other platforms. So unfortunately for Meta, that's a big chunk that you're basically taking away from creators, and they probably will look the other way. We'll see how that works. However, that's not a great percentage cut. Honda, talking about not good things, this is not a great look for Honda. So this week they sent a legal letter to Printables. Now Printables is a site where you can get 3D printed models, or models to 3D print. These might be spares, these might be all sorts of things. There might be something that somebody's just created. There might just be novelties, for instance. However, Honda wanted everything taken down that had the word Honda even attached to it, the title, description, etc. So this included novelty items that people had created themselves, maybe replacement parts that you cannot get, that aren't replaceable anyway, that Honda do not sell. They wanted everything taken down. So this does not apply to other websites at the moment. Thingiverse, for instance, it still has those things on. I think this is me on Thingiverse yesterday taking this background picture. Downloaded a model, as you can see, so it's still available on Thingiverse. However, the point I thought this was really interesting. You've got companies like Apple reluctantly embracing the right to repair movements. You've got also, there's lots of sort of tractor manufacturers and car manufacturers that are also, Tesla for instance being one of them, who do not really want you to repair your own car. Honda seem to be going in the same direction. Now this is Honda Europe, by the way, so the legal letter came from Honda Europe, but it applied to a worldwide site. This is not a Honda America thing or any other place. So so that's not great. So this is either one of two things. It's a misreading of what really the law and the spirit of the law and the PR of the law as well really mean for Honda. They probably overstepped a little bit there because a lot of this is fair use and it doesn't even have a brand on it at all. Or it's the future of where auto manufacturers are going to stop you from repairing your own vehicles with generic items. So not quite sure where this is going, but that could be a big thing. In NFT news, there's always got to be an NFT thing. The big trends from last year were really sort of NFTs, the Metaverse, and probably Web3. NFTs, like the Metaverse, will get you as many rolling eye sort of reactions as they will sort of enthusiastic descriptions. NFTs have really dived in the last couple of weeks, if not months, in terms of popularity. If you look at the Google searches for that, it's really, really low right now. People are sort of, they're kind of squinting at it a little bit, going, come on then, show me what it's actually used for. This is a really good example. So this is Jack Dorsey's first ever tweet. Jack Dorsey set up Twitter. He sold his tweet as an NFT last year for $2.9 million. That was bought. He gave all of that to charity, so good on you, Jack. The person who bought it put it up for sale last week and wanting $2.8 million for it. So looking to make nearly $45 million profit out of that, of which he was going to give half to charity, which I think is, given the circumstances, yeah, great, but you could have been a bit more generous maybe. However, it only made $280 in bids. You do not have to accept that on OpenSea, which is where the bidding was taking place. So he left it on there, and it's taken nearly just over a week now, and the bids have gone up to $30,000 pretty much. But that is a long way short of even $2.9 million, let alone the $48 million that he was after. So this is probably another little shot across the bows, or a little sort of inkling of the inflated value that everybody was paying for this craze last year has actually come down to the floor, really. So we'll see where that goes. This might just be an isolated thing, or this might be a further trend. This is a really interesting report from the University of Rochester in the UK. And it's talking about how can you be tracked by inferring data from other people. So if you've switched off every single thing on your phone, but you're still using applications, but they're not tracking you, then actually it turns out your friends, your friend cohort around you, if you look at their data, they can predict where you will be with 95% accuracy. So as long as they had 4 data sets in this test, so it was Brightkite, Gowalla, WePlaces, and mobile phone data. So from your friends, if you looked at all of those, they could predict where you were going to be. Now the two graphs are, or graphs if you're from the south, the two graphs that you can see here, I'll try and explain them. Entropy is the amount of difference essentially. So low difference, you can see Brightkite has a very low difference, it's very certain. So it's very certain because it uses GPS basically. If you're looking at something like mobile phone data, similarly quite certain where you will be, and likewise you've got WePlaces, it's less certain about the location, it's a little bit inferred from posts and that sort of thing. However, from that entropy, it's almost the opposite of where predictability will be. So if something has low entropy, it probably has quite high predictability. So, and that actually flows. You can see how that flips over. So what the scary thing is just even people in the same location of you can predict your future location with 85% accuracy. So people like you go to places that people like you go to, and therefore the places they go to next probably where people like you go to as well. So, so that's kind of interesting. So if you thought you were doing the whole thing, escaping from the law, or whatever you're doing, you're hiding with everything turned off, even the people around you, complete strangers using the same apps as you, can predict where you will be. That's kind of interesting, scary. Lego and Epic have teamed up, or are teaming up, to create what they call the kid-friendly Metaverse. We don't know what this will be. This is actually just one of the previous games I've screenshotted here just to give you an idea of what it could look like, I guess. However, they put in $2 billion into this partnership, partly funded by Sony, who obviously a part of Epic. Yeah, so what does this mean? We don't really know. But if you're slightly cynical, you might have said, well, didn't we have metaverses before where kids could go where they were totally kid friendly? And those are called things like Habbo Hotel, Club Penguin, Bin Weevils, Moshi Monsters, those sorts of things. We've seen this before. Moderation was a big part of it. I know because I was part of that as well. However, The difference here will be kids using VR headsets, I guess, because that's what is currently mixed up with metaverses. If you've been on Facebook Horizons really of late, you will notice that nearly every voice that you hear coming from the people whizzing around in the multiplayer space are kids. You know, they sound like 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, you know, that sort of thing. So there is a sort of a kid problem on the metaverse, if we're going to call it that, i.e. the Facebook version already. So it'd be really interesting to see what this will be and how it can be attractive and also policed correctly. And finally, we've had 2 mentions of Twitter this week. So this is Elon Musk's week. Had quite a colourful week. He has also quite a colourful past with Twitter. So he's obviously had some run-ins with the Securities Commission in the US about manipulating stocks and shares and Dogecoin and that sort of thing using Twitter. Allegedly, obviously. Therefore, trying to buy Twitter would be quite an audacious move, which is exactly what he tried to do, or at least has offered to do. So wanted to become the highest shareholder in the week, with something like 9.1% shareholding. And one of the other partners said, oh, by the way, we've got 10 point something percent. And he went, okay, in which case, okay, I'll buy the whole lot. And offered $43 billion to buy it. Now, that's an insane amount to even have, let alone bid. However, the shareholders went, well, we can't allow this because, you know, it would be chaos. So they all then sort of rallied around, and there were talks of a poison pill technique and all sorts of things. However, we don't know really why or whether this is actually going to go through. Is it just really Elon Musk trolling, or is he really going to try and do a hostile takeover of Twitter? He has relatively strange views on what free speech should be, for instance, but also has some very sort of strong views on how Twitter should be changing. So this might just be a way of him saying to Twitter, hey, look, you know, if you don't change, I'm going to do an aggressive bid and you might have to sell to me anyway, and then I'll do it, so you might as well just do these changes. So it's a weird way to do it. It's a weird way to force possibly a company to make some changes by buying them for $43 billion. There you go. Hopefully that was interesting. Hopefully it was useful. If it was, give it a like, and I'll see you next week.